What's up, everybody? It's Charles. Today I'm taking your questions on transmission replacement, timing belt issues, front diff services, and more. This is episode 237 of the Humble Mechanic podcast. So to get a question on a show like this, email me, charles@humblemechanic.com, and put question for Charles in the subject. Ask that question at the top, hit the enter button a couple times, then give me the details of the question. That makes life for all of us so much easier. Also, if you don't see your question on a show like this, be sure to hit that quick videos playlist on YouTube where I do one question per video. You can also listen to the audio-only version of these shows as well as many others over on iTunes, Stitcher, or of course, as always, at HumbleMechanic.com. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. If you want exclusive content, discounts to places like Black Forest, Eastwood, MT Knives, S&P Automotive, USB Motorsports, Adams Polishes, and more, check out that crew membership program. Great way to support the show. More importantly, though, than that, you get some awesome discounts that can easily pay for that membership. You also get downloads of the VW Audi training manuals that I make for the classes that I teach. As always, the links are down in the description to all of that stuff. All right, let's hit these questions. First one up. I just changed a Golf 5 FSI gearbox. It accelerates okay, but when I hit the brakes, it makes a huge noise and is jerking like it's having difficulty downshifting to a lower gear. What could be the problem? Well, that is a whole lot of what could be the problem. Let's walk through a couple of scenarios. Very first thing you need to do before you do anything else, go back, double check your workmanship, make sure all the suspension bolts are tight, make sure everything you removed has been reinstalled. If you didn't replace the bolt and dropped the subframe, you might want to consider going back and giving those bolts for the subframe a little snug. You really do want to replace those. They are torque to yield. And boy, those bolts, out of probably all the torque to yield that are not engine bolts, can get fussy if you don't replace them. So I'd look at your workmanship. Priority one, that's only going to take a visual inspection, and most of the time you can find the problem there. If you don't find the problem there, we kind of need more information. Was it a new transmission, a used transmission, a remanufactured transmission? Did you or someone locally rebuild the trans? Because that could kind of send us in different directions. If this is a new transmission and we have the proper coding, we're going to want to double check our coding and make sure it's right. We set our adaptation for kickdown. That usually takes care of itself, but it may be something worth going back in and doing. We might very well have an issue with the transmission itself, but I'm not going to go there just yet. Same kind of thing if it was remanufactured from VW, you would go down that same route. If it was locally rebuilt, well, now we need to compare what were the problems that it was having before versus now. Are these the same symptoms or are they different symptoms? That's going to send us on two different paths. If it's the same problem, well, maybe the transmission wasn't the issue at all. Maybe it was something as simple as a clogged fuel filter. Yes, I have seen that exact situation. It could be something as simple as that. It could be engine performance related or really anything in that space outside of transmission. If it's the same symptom, we still want to look at some of those engine possibilities, but now we want to examine, was this properly rebuilt? Maybe a part in that rebuild process wasn't replaced that needed to be. This is one of those situations, guys, where I don't know, and really, without putting hands on it or eyeballs on it, it's going to be almost impossible to tell. So I'm going to try and just give you a couple of things that you can check. Some very easy, some a little bit challenging. If it is a salvage yard transmission or one you had sitting on the shop floor, now we really need to make sure, is it the right transmission? Just because it bolts up doesn't mean that the software is correct, doesn't mean that the gearing is correct. We could easily have a transmission that the case is the same, but the guts are different, or the electronics are different. Maybe the issue is our computer, our TCM, whether it's a DSG or whether it's just a regular like slush box automatic. We might have an issue with the TCM. We might have an issue with the mechatronics unit. Unfortunately for this question, there's no way for me to be able to tell you it's this problem, because I can't answer that question. There's so many variables in there. So if you want to drop more information down in the comments section, I highly recommend that, and we can read through it and maybe poke around and try and figure out an answer or something to help you. But really, what you really want to do before you do anything else, this was always my process whenever I did a job on a car and the same issue presented itself or something different. the very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back and check my workmanship and make sure everything is correct, no extra parts, everything got installed. Fluid level and condition are gonna be another thing you're gonna wanna check. Even if that was a new transmission, they're supposed to come pre-filled, but you can't guarantee that 100%. So I'd check the fluid level, condition, make sure it's the right fluid. VW and Audi and many other German cars, really, they get very, very fussy when you don't put the right fluid in it. So if you put, off-the-shelf fluid that just said ATF on it, it might not have all the things that transmission needs to properly function. So you may want to do a drain and fill of the fluid, especially if it was used, and try that first. But man, I'm telling you, double check your workmanship, and you're gonna have to go from there after you do the easy things. Then we move into the hard things, and if that doesn't take care of it, boy, I don't really have an answer, unfortunately. I wish I did. I wish I could just read the mind of the transmission and answer that question, but unfortunately, I can't do that. So drop some more info down in the comments. Let's move on to the next one. All right, next one up is from Tim. Can the rear deck dash be removed on an 07 2.5 Jetta? If so, how? All right, Tim, this is called oftentimes the parcel shelf or the hatch shelf. This is going to be that landing area right behind the rear seats, like the place that people put stuffed animals and, well, sometimes hats and a bunch of other stuff that in the event of a collision turn into projectiles around the car. So if you're talking about the plastic trim that covers that, yes, it can be removed. It's not hard, but it kind of sucks. So you will need to technically, this is the technically part, right? We can flat rate around that and do it a little bit easier, but the technical proper repair manual way, remove the seat backs of the back seat, so just the backrest of the back seat, remove the C-pillar trim, and then that piece does come out. There was a time in the very early Mark V B6 cars where they came with two different kinds of satellite radio. I think it was XM and Sirius, and some cars had one, other cars had others, and then we were swapping these things around like crazy because the customer had one of the services but bought a car with the wrong module in it, so we were flip-flopping them around. You always hoped you got a Passat wagon because they were super easy to swap out. And while the Jettas weren't hard, it was a bit more work. What we would do is we'd actually just lower the back seats and pop the trim clips up for that plastic trim, and then just shove your hands underneath with a ratchet and loosen the screws enough to slide it out and get that module out. That's the thing hanging in the trunk, bolted up to that parcel shelf. Not a horrible job to do, just not all that fun. If you're talking about the actual metal, the structure of the car, you can cut and weld that in and out too if you want to, but it's really not meant to be serviced in any way, especially outside of a collision. That is structural bracing for the car, so you want to be real careful. Depending on what you're trying to do, and if you need it off or just up to get to that satellite module would depend on how I would do it. But again, the right way, because I'll say it 100 more times, take the two C-pillars out, which are the back pillars that go up to the roof. Take those out. They just pop out. I think there might be a screw on each side. The side trim along the seat backs you can just fold down. Then that piece does come up pretty darn easy. All right, next one up is from Alex. Hey Charles, my Mark IV GTI 1.8 turbo 2001 needed a timing belt. I changed it and accidentally put it a tooth off and ran it for a minute. Since then, I believe I put the timing belt on correctly, but now I have engine codes P0012 and P1200. I reset the engine light and it's changed from P0012 to P0011, but the P1200 stays. The engine sounds fine and I can't seem to find a problem. Love the show. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Alex. All right, Alex. The P1200 is not a timing code. I think that's like a boost pressure code. So you want to make sure that you plugged everything in correctly up on the top of the valve cover. A lot of times people leave some of those things disconnected as they're taking stuff off to make more room. Make sure all that's plugged in properly. No damage to wires, pinch wires, that kind of thing. On the timing, okay, you say, and this is going to sound like I'm being a jerk, and I promise you I'm not, man. I've seen this happen before, and it comes in the way we're using our words. It says you believe you put it on correctly. Okay, guys, Alex and everybody else, you need to listen to this. You can't believe that you do. You can't believe that you put it correctly. You have to know it's correct. Thinking, believing, hoping, praying, whatever, does not tell you whether it's correct or not. And Alex, I'm not picking on you, dude. I'm really not. It's just I've heard the I think it's correct thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and walk over and start asking like follow-up questions, all to find out it's just I think it's right. I never actually checked. So Alex, the first thing you need to do, man, is you need to know for sure, 100%, without question, whether it's correct or not. You don't need to take the car apart to do this though. Pop that upper cover, timing cover off, and rotate the engine around so it's at TDC. When you're looking at the top gear where it's got the mark on the valve cover and the mark on the gear, right? Sometimes it can look like it's off. They don't necessarily line up. What I always did was I took a pocket screwdriver and I would lay it on the tooth that has the mark. That screwdriver doesn't almost perfectly line up with that mark on the valve cover. You very well might be out of time. You need to do that with the marks on the pulley as well, because depending on how you're looking at it, if you're looking down at it and your head is this way or this way, it might look like those marks are kind of offset. So you really need to get right on it. That's why I like to use a screwdriver and just lay it on the mark and see. Now you might not be a full tooth off. You could look like you're about a half a tooth off. Maybe you had the slack when you tensioned the belt, maybe you had the slack on the wrong side and that actually pushed it out of time a little bit. If that's correct, do this. Clear the fault codes 3 times really fast. See, what happened is you put the belt on what you think was off a tooth, then you moved it. So you went from a code that was over retarded to a code that's over advanced. So you could have easily had your belt here if this was the timing mark and just put it 1 tooth too far. Typically that doesn't cause a lot of problems. It usually never causes damage to the engine, but it will cause this fault. If all that is good and you can say to me, Charles, I know this is correct, now we need to go a little bit deeper because maybe we have an issue on the back side of the engine, the timing chain side, right? Our timing belt drives our exhaust cam drives our intake cam. So we need to make sure that timing is correct as well. Any of those timings off, right? Any of those pieces of the puzzle not correct, we can create those faults for ourselves. So step 1, go back and be 100% sure, without a doubt, don't believe it, know it in your heart and soul and guts, whatever else, know for a fact that that timing is right. Because if you don't know the timing is right, you don't know if the timing's right, and that's a problem. There's no sense in chasing any of this stuff if you don't know for sure, 100%. All right, last one up because it's hot in the garage and I'm starting to sweat comes from Tony. Says, hey, I have a MK5 R32 looking to change the front diff fluid. I found the drain, but I don't see the fill plug. Can you help me? Well, Tony, as a matter of fact, I can. I sat and thought about this for a few minutes and seemed to remember that both of the things, the drain and the fill, are both on the right side of the car. There are probably number 5 Allens, maybe 6 Allens, but then I couldn't remember where exactly they were. So what did I do? But I turned to someone on VW Vortex and actually found a great picture. Honestly, it's a great step-by-step if you want to follow that on all the fluids of the MK5. This is a pretty straightforward job. So like on my R32, the transmission shares oil with the bevel box. That's the part that's really technically the front diff. For the all-wheel drive is the bevel box. And it shares fluid. So when I service it, which I'll be doing again soon since I lost a bunch of the footage on the first go-around, you drain and fill the transmission, right? And then you go over to the side and you drain the bevel box, and then you fill it all up with one fill. It's all the same fill. On yours, it's a DSG, so it's a little different. We need to fill the bevel box independently. If you look at the axle on the right side front, inner, right, where the axle bolts to the transmission, or technically the bevel box, I guess. At about 9 o'clock, there is a bolt that is an Allen. That's the fill hole. Okay, it's kind of tricky to get to. You probably want a ball so that the axle flange doesn't get in the way. And you take that out. Make sure you can get the drain plug out too. Take the fill plug out first, then take the drain plug out in case one of them gets stuck. That's never one that I've ran into an issue with getting stuck. Drain it, fill it. It looks like it holds about 0.9 liters. That, I believe, is one of those you need the car level. You need to drain it. You fill it until fluid starts coming out of that tube. If you can't like mangle the bottle around to get it full, or you don't have the high dollar VW tool, go to Amazon and buy one of these little pumps. and it screws to the bottle, and you can just pump it and fill it up. That's how I did all those fluid services on the R32. That's how we'll do it on the GTI if we have to. It's the easiest way. Those pumps are cheap. You can clean them and reuse them a million times, probably not a million, but you can use them a bunch of times and for whatever you need to. They're great to have around. They screw right to the bottle most of the time. So highly recommend those. I'll link one down in the description on Amazon if you want to check that out. Fill it up, run through the gears. If you have the car all the way off the ground, I always like to run it so that all the wheels are turning with very little load on them. So wheels on, car, all four wheels off the ground, put it in drive and just let the wheels turn. This circulates fluid. Then you can actually pull that fill plug back out and recheck the level, make sure that it actually is correct. In fact, if you wanted to, flush the fluid, you could do that twice, run it with clean fluid, shut the car off, drain it, fill it back up, and run it again and check the fluid level. So I would do that if you're concerned about flushing it. Otherwise, that stuff is pretty good. There's no service interval for it at all anywhere, but that is how you check and top it off. I'll try and link that article on VW Vortex. Shout out to Vortex for hopefully not yelling at me for stealing one of their pictures for this video, but it is helping out the community, so whatever, I'll take those lumps. If you're mad at me, VW Vortex, well, just email me and we'll work it out. Guys, that's it. I'm gonna wrap it up there. Questions, comments, you know what to do. You like the video, thumbs up button, always appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, of course on Snapchat. Guys, thank you for watching. Keep those questions coming. Don't forget there's an audio version only if you like that. Thank you for watching or listening, and I'll see you next time.